Boys and girls and boys, attack helicopters, super intelligent shades of the colour purple. You're all welcome here. Anyway, it's my pleasure once again to be having a late night in my case, chewing of the fat with another grumpy old man. Coach Stephen's in the house. It's been a while. Coach Stephen, what is new? What should we talk about?
Well, grumpy old man, that's right, yeah, 59. I suppose that qualifies me to being old. Definitely a man. I definitely identify as a man. And I'm grumpy. I don't know about that. Since I've been carnivore, I doubt it, actually. I'm pretty ticky all the time, to be honest. I suppose I do get a little bit grumpy over one particular thing that has been picked up by you from Dr. Cyrus and also Mike the Vegan. Now, when both of those people are saying the same things, you know you're in trouble, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's something that's close to my heart because I obtained specialist practitioner status about 10 years ago in obesity and diabetes. So I've seen a lot of diabetic people. And because I'm one of those that wants to know the inside out and upside down of everything, I also qualified as a phlebotomist and got involved in private blood tests. So one of the things that started to come up on the low carb, certainly with keto and definitely with carnivore, was blood glucose management being really well managed. And many people got continual blood glucose monitors, which was fine. And they started to look really good. They could go out in the sun and all those sort of things was excellent. They didn't have any clinical presentation of diabetes, no thirst, no excessive urination. And then when we were getting the test back, occasionally their HbA1c would be a little bit high. And I'd look at their continual glucose monitor and they'd scratch their head because, education is a big thing, having the knowledge. And they'd say, well, this continual blood glucose monitor is showing me that my average range it is great. For Americans, it's 85, in the 5s, 4.5, those sort of things in the UK. And I said, well, that is a good test, but if you think it isn't that great, you could use a finger prick, which is actual blood and actual glucose, and you could check to see if your monitor is faulty, if you're worried about that. And the more this happened, the more I realized it wasn't the fact that a continual blood glucose monitor isn't directly measuring blood glucose, because the finger stick definitely does. And it worked out that the HbA1c was not really telling us what we wanted to know, because we'd then say, right, do the full blood test, do the fasting insulin, fasting glucose, C-peptide. Obviously, you've got your daily readings. So we know your daily readings are not spiking, dropping. There's no sort of diabetic thing. But officially, I suppose you're either pre-diabetic or diabetic, but you have no clinical presentation and you have nothing to back that up. So if you're doing a differential diagnosis, you would say, well, this is a bit of a head scratcher. Now, just by accident, I had somebody come in who was hemolytic anemic, all right, which is your red blood cells don't last as long as 120 days. And in your training, you're told to ignore the HbA1c because the red blood cells are not kicking around long enough to give you a true measure of average glycation. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or Sherlock Holmes to think, right, so if red blood cells not lasting long enough gives you an artificially low HbA1c, and you're quite allowed to say that with those other tests, obviously, surely if it's higher than it seems like it should be, then maybe they're lasting longer. So then I started to get people to do a reticulocyte count. Reticular just means something, well, basically that's a baby red blood cell and it comes from the bone marrow. And lo and behold, that's what's happening. Now, both those influencers, one who is firmly a vegan and the other one is pretty low carb, I think, just think that the life of a red blood cell theory is BS. And I know you've called them both out that isn't the case. And you have to look at context. And that's been a thing for the last 5 years, basically. I've been saying about all blood tests, not just that particular one. It's all about context. And you've got to stop saying things like, it should be this. I'd like to see it this number. Because in your video, which I thought was excellent, you were doing what I was screaming out. Well, why? Where are you getting this perfect number from? And also, what cohort? And that's the other big thing. You see, if I have someone that's high carb this doesn't happen for a start because they fit the normative ranges, because the normative ranges are based around a high carb sort of cohort. That's basically the population. So we eat differently. We have a different response. So I never really actually look at bloods now and think, well, that's a bit out of range. I always think, why would that be? And I think there is quite a groundswell with like LDL cholesterol, which isn't cholesterol as we know, but that's what everyone says, LDL cholesterol. Is it high? Well, that's the pejorative term, isn't it? High makes you think, oh, that's not good. But actually, is it normal? Is that what it should be?
I was just going to say it always fascinates me, and you've hit a number of nails right on the head there with these bloods, as I would expect you to do, of course, Stephen, being of your ilk, really. And the thing that people don't seem to understand is that the whole testing regime itself becomes basically victim to the begging the question informal fallacy, in that it assumes your lifestyle behaviors, nutritionally, exercise-wise, and everything else are in line with Joe Public or Josephine Public, and then tests you under that assumption. And, you fall into a range with an X number of standard deviations of the mean value for said population. Nobody bats an eyelid, even if there is clear pathology. If you're outside that range, then that triggers the paint by numbers, feet in the outlines, hands on the wall behavior of medics, especially in countries where, medics can be struck off for thinking for themselves and things like that. And then they'll say, well, this is abnormal. This is abnormal, they will say. And ergo, we must intervene is the sort of, again, they're begging the question, the next logical fallacy. Why must you intervene even if it is abnormal? Well, because
yes, there's no
risk of disease, they say. And well, great, show me the evidence of risk of disease, because risk is a cause and effect statement requiring a mechanism. Is there one of those that's not speculative? Is there one of those that's been established with an experiment on human beings over multiple decades locked in laboratories? I wonder. Has that happened?
Never.
So it's the same old speech every time. The other thing that's really interesting on the A1C is, again, with the begging the question, it assumes that your blood glucose is going to go like that during the day. And any one given reading could be at a high point, could be at a low point. That's why we say, well, let's track you over time using the A1C test, which gives us a mean value. And then they say, okay, right, if your A1C is over 6.4 in many countries, you are a diabetic, okay? The damage that would be done to a person by the kind of blood spiking and troughing that would be required to produce an average blood glucose of 6.4 makes that number seem to be an appropriate number to apply to everybody. However, as we said before with the begging the question, carnivores don't spike their glucose up and down multiple times a day. It's stable, really stable. There's no evidence whatsoever that damage is being done because of that level. So even if the carnivore person's A1C drifts up over 6, there's no evidence that that's problematic, because there are no spikes which are required for the 6 point whatever to be problematic for someone who is doing that with it. You get what I'm Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah, so
I've got a graphic somewhere of someone's continual blood glucose monitor. I can't get it to hand straight away. But yes, you're right. I mean, it literally does show a spike, which is very pronounced. It literally is a spike.
Yeah.
And then a trough, then a spike. And then literally 3 days into low carb, it was flat. Slightly higher sometimes. I mean, if you look at another influencer, Paul Saladino, he often shows his bloods. His glucose, if you look carefully when he points certain things out, but by the end of the day, it is high. Higher than when it starts in the morning, which is unusual.
Yeah.
So I think
that might have something to do with the 400 grams of carbohydrates he's pouring down his neck every day.
I just think in the end, you still got to look at people. Numbers are great. Empirical data is interesting. But in the end, if someone says, I'm eating carnivore, look at me, I'm healthy, I'm radiant, I'm wonderful, I'm fit, I'm ripped, I don't think you can take their bloods and then say, yeah, but the bloods say you're not. And that's the basis of what you've just said. And what you say in those videos, but it's how I feel all the time, because at least once a week I get a query saying, I've had my bloods. I will go off on a tangent. The latest thing is not giving people their numbers and just saying
Numbers
it's high or it's
even. So is math and logic, all racist.
Yes. Yeah. And it's incredible. And I can give you a really good example, because this C-reactive protein, CRPH, in Britain, the range is 0.5 to 5, which is quite broad anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're 5.1, you're high. Now, I've had people come in with a score of 80 or 50. And I've also had people celebrate getting to 20. Yeah. Getting to 20. And I'm saying, well, look, if they know it's abnormal, in their opinion, by the way, get the numbers. And they do not want to give the numbers out. Well, that's atrocious, I think.
Well, whose numbers are they?
Well, exactly. It's his blood, isn't it? And I find that very fishy. I just think...
That's the same thing that we say to the vegans all the time. Show us your numbers from the experiment that was conducted on human beings, properly controlled, properly numbered, properly tenured, locked in labs for decades, so that you can tell us exactly what the effects are on our health outcomes long-term of eating too much saturated fat. Of course, if you don't have any other ideas or anything else to talk about, you just have to repeat that stupid line again. That's for another day.
It is, yeah. Well, it's crazy. The other thing I think that's in the news, maybe we should do a monthly news roundup of stupidity that we've experienced, is fibre. Oh, well, actually, Paul Mason's going to come up. Dr. Paul Mason, he did a brilliant speech at Low Carb Down Under, and Facebook claimed it was misinformation, which is atrocious, because none of it was. It was all pretty great. Yeah. And he did that fantastic look at fibre. I think there were 63 participants. Well, anyway, somebody on Instagram messaged and said, no, fibre is wonderful. It's amazing. And tried to rip that study apart. So I said, okay, you're talking about science. Send me a study that actually includes a cohort of people not having fibre. That's all you've got to do. Send me the study you're referring to. So I got a really long reply, and within it, there was 3 links.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's your proof. Here's the proof you asked for.
Yeah.
So the first link I looked at, it was a meta-analysis, 16 studies. Poor old me looking at that. Oh, hang on a minute. There's no fibre group in any of them. There's not one.
Yeah.
The second link didn't even work. Yeah. And the third one was an opinion piece, but that was the science. Yeah. So, I thanked him. I said, thank you. Very polite. But you haven't done what I asked. And that frightens me, in that these people are prepared to write a novel about how great fibre is. And when you ask a simple question, they can't produce any evidence, but think they can.
The other thing that you do is you win these debates with people, apparently, according to vegan logic. You do that by swamping them with as many citations, relevant or otherwise, as you can, without actually analyzing any of those for veracity or applicability to the situation. Or you use good old terminology like you're a denier. That's what it is. You're a denier, Stephen.
Yes. That is a trick, isn't it? But that's across the world about everything at the moment. If you've got any opinion, give you a label.
Right. Good.
The thing is that they didn't like about the Paul Mason thing was it was only 63 people, but they all got resolution with no fibre. The people on no fibre. So their own experience of real people is not relevant. You see, they're quite dismissive of that, but happy to have a study funded by Kellogg's, who have a vested interest. Yeah, I suppose the other thing that's sound like I'm ranting, but I'm not. Is when you're looking at the vegan side of things, is the other conversation I had this week was quite a few people saying we're not designed as humans to eat meat, and the old look at a gorilla, how jacked it is, and I just can't believe there are people that firstly think we're not designed to eat meat. And if you say about, stable isotope testing and long bones from every continent over every period of time, you're sort of wrong. They don't want to know. They just look at things that are ridiculous, like we haven't got claws and we haven't got fangs.
Sharp, pointy teeth like this.
Yes. And I just think, well, if you look at a cave painting, I think we've got spears. And I think they're always groups with spears and weapons. So we've got this. And I think maybe that's what's lacking on that side. They haven't got, and they have, yes.
And then.
And to me, it seems, again, a no-brainer. I just don't understand these arguments at the moment.
People whose theological belief structure requires them to be blind will indeed make them blind to the objective reality that we find ourselves in. People will selectively, it seems, filter what gets through to their consciousness in line with their confirmation bias. People have no interest actually in the truth. They have interest in being correct about their belief structure. Ergo, anything that is damaging to their belief structure is excluded.
It's frightening what's going on. I think I know this is going to go out on YouTube, so can't really say everything we want to say, but the way they're shadow, I like that mug. Shadow banning and pushing people aside. One thing I've been saying is, if I was now where I was 10 years ago and I went on YouTube and I wanted to look at how to reverse all my problems because I was pre-diabetic, lower left quadrant pain, having a colonoscopy, had a coronary artery calcium scan of 639, I was basically sicker and fatter. And I was a personal trainer and I was living the WHO food guidelines. I was eating less, moving more, all of that, grains, porridge oats, skim milk, and I was getting fatter and sicker. Now, so I went on YouTube and I found Dr. Eric Berg, and it was life-changing. Well, now, if that period of time was now, I would not find that information. And I think that
you won't find Eric Berg right now unless you type in Eric Berg.
Absolutely. But anybody of that ilk, I would not find. So I would be fat and sicker and possibly dead. Really seriously. I can remember being in the hospital and thinking, my time's up. When I had that lower left quadrant pain, because my mum, who didn't eat red meat, by the way, and was not vegan, but very vegetarian, brown flakes, a Complan, all these sort of things to try and be healthy. She died of colon cancer. She had a terrible time with that. And I sat there thinking, well, this is another topic. Well, that's my genetics. That's it. I'm going to get colon cancer. I've got pain in that area. I've had a colonoscopy. It's terrible what's happening, that you can't get that information. And you get, not only do you not get that good information, you get absolutely atrocious information. I suppose that brings me to another thing that is a common retort. Well, I've just Googled this, and it said this.
All right. Good.
Google now is the oracle. What was it? I've just Googled how much iron certain foods contain. I want to get more iron into my diet. And not one of the top 10 on Google is red meat. I'm like, right, well, every one of those top 10 is not even heme iron. It's not even the iron that we can use. Then do you not? I don't think you'd be found, Bart. I found you by doing searching.
If you dive into your back office in your YouTube channel and have a look at your stats, as I've done, and I often do because I'm, a stats guy and I want to know what's going on and stuff, you've got these two worms that go along your timeline, and it talks about returning viewers and
new viewers
who are discovering your channel for the first time on any given day, and it traces these along. And you can see where Al Gore flicks a switch on his rhythms. And it's happened to me in a now nearly 6-year period of being on the YouTubes. There are clear demarcations along the pathway where you can look at it and you can point to it. I said something naughty there. I did something wrong there, according to Al Gore, And what happens is they turn down, they massively turn down your visibility to new people. They don't turn it right off. So there's still a trickle of people that come in slowly. But the heydays of when Al Gore's happy with me briefly, that have happened during my period of 6 years, much, much more organic viewership is derived when YouTube are allowing it. Not by favoring my stuff, but just by treating it fairly and reasonably with regard to everybody else's.
Secondly, just wanted to tell you, because just quickly, we were talking about stem cells there and the bone marrow. I did actually have a break from the stem enhance. I had about 6 months where I didn't take it, and pretty good experiment, because carnivore, there's not many other variables. So I was doing everything else the same, eating the same, training the same and everything. So the only thing really in my life that was different, consumption-wise and activity-wise, was I stopped taking the stem enhance. So I can categorically say, now I'm back on it, that yes, it's huge. Makes a big difference. Makes a really big difference. So I'm glad I've got it here. So yes, I'm back on that, and that is definitely working. So I want to thank you for pointing that out to me.
So is it your contention, young man, that you were on cerebral stem enhance for a bit and you felt like it was a benefit maybe, but you weren't 100% sure of that? Then you went off stem enhance for about 6 months, and then you went back on, and now you're absolutely certain it makes a massive difference.
Yes.
Common story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Common story.
Yes. Category. Yes. My N equals 1 is pretty convincing for me. Absolutely. Cool. Because it made a huge difference. And, I will repeat, there was no other factors. And 6 months of not taking it, I didn't feel as good. Just little things like the vision was not as good, and just everything, skin, vitality. I was starting to get the skin. I used to have a really bad blotch here. It looked like someone had got a strawberry and smacked it against my forehead. And if I got stressed, that would definitely come out. And that sort of little appearance of that when we had catastrophe, when the roof that we just paid a lot of money for started to leak, and then a few other things. Well, within weeks of going back on it, that had gone. And it can't be anything else. That's the thing. Just can't be anything else. Now, look, I haven't looked at any numbers. I'm just going on experience, clinical presentation.
Quite miraculous. A lot of people don't realize that before the adult stem cells differentiate into replacement heart cells, brain cells, muscle cells, skin cells, not hair follicle cells. But before they do change, a lot of people don't realize that these adult stem cells are actually flicking out exosomes in the tens of thousands per hour. But these exosomes that they flick out contain bits of DNA, sometimes fully formed proteins, chemical messengers, second messenger, feedbacks, whatever. They are able to read what's going on in a tissue that they're circulating past and flick out the right stuff to, for example, tone down inflammation. If an adult stem cell detects a cancerous cell or mass, for example, it will send exosomes out, giving that cell or that mass of cells the message that it ought to self-destruct. Incredible.
It's the human body, isn't it? I mean, The thing is, all it's doing is boosting the human body's amazing facilities to regenerate.
Yeah, that's it. And then the other thing that a lot of people miss or don't seem to hear, no matter how many times I say it, let me say it again. When the adult stem cell has finished spitting out exosomes and now it's going to become a new muscle cell, the telomeres in that muscle cell are full length. That's why you should take cerebral products. And if you don't understand that, then you better send Stephen an email and ask him to explain to you why it is so important that telomere length should remain as long as possible in as many of your cells as possible in your body. And we're not allowed to say fountain of youth.
I suppose another, as you were talking there, I was thinking, I've also gone back to sports that I haven't done for a long time. So soccer, as I say in America, or football as it's properly known. I've gone back to playing football after a 10-year break. And I recover, and firstly, I can do it. Everyone else is about 20 years younger than me. So I'm not looking embarrassing, scoring goals and doing all right. And I think also with the training, I mean, that's in the last 5 weeks. Now, maybe that's something I haven't really realized until we've just been talking. Was it the fact that I was feeling more rejuvenated?
Well,
I've just realized this. So I got back into wanting to sprint. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you something actually while you're on, because Jane tried this.
Oh, the good old Collagen active. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got anything you want to Tell me about.
There are several comments that I actually would like to make about Collagen Active. Yes, story after story after story after story. This stuff somehow synergizes incredibly with the other cereal products and amplifies the effect of everything. If people want to see a really, really good, really heartfelt testimonial on Collagen Active from a real person, they should have a look at a video on my channel posted not that many moons ago. And it's called Bart's Mum is in the House. And she tells us all about it. And I didn't pay her.
Well, why would you? Well, what about the good things? I mean, it's got biotin in it, selenium, and type 1 and type 3, isn't it?
Yeah. So what we've got is a preparation basically of type 1 and type 3 collagen peptide, which basically are able to cross the alimentary membrane directly and be rapidly formed under the influence of vitamin C into a fully formed collagen, bam, in one step. Whereas the other way that humans have to make collagen is via amino acids and small branch chains that have been broken down. Type 1 and type 3 collagen survives the acid environment, doesn't get broken down through the straight together. Awesome. Makes it so much easier to produce collagen, which as you age, even more important. Yeah. So that's the good stuff. And yeah, a whole bunch of other synergistic things and goodies and bits in there that the company have had their formulators put together for us. And we're grateful. And actually, this might surprise you. It surprised me. The company's biggest selling product is the collagen.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, actually, because if you, especially women who are menopausal, postmenopausal, I think they're looking for sort of thyroid support. So they take selenium or biotin, which it's got vitamin E. And that was one of the things that I was quite surprised at, because Jane was looking at that. She's 55, and I don't think she looks 55 at all.
No, she's 55. You're pulling the leg. I know she is, but you don't believe it.
But I think, but she's trying to future-proof herself, because, she's in the fitness industry, does Pilates and some online stuff. And it's interesting to see that I think it will make a difference, that, maybe we should document it with photographs and stuff like that. But the thing I wanted to say was, it's also sort of reduced the cost of supplements, because she was taking selenium and she was taking, like I say, biotin. So
yeah,
I think it's a good product personally. So I'm really excited to see what happens to it. I would ask a strange question then. I don't think this. I'm just playing devil's advocate. What about the possibility of having too much protein, and therefore that's all going to turn to glucose?
Right. Type 1 and type 3 collagen peptide is a fairly robust structure. That's why it survives the acid environment and is not broken down into amino acids in the stomach. That's why it's able to cross through. There's a transporter for it. Straight out, bang it together with some vitamin C. There's some collagen. Jobs are good in. Now we don't need to synthesize so much of that. So it's not going to be an over proteining yourself. And actually, also, if you look at it, like, you're supposed to necessarily, from the recommended dosage, there's a little sachet like that size that you pour a powder water. You're supposed to have one of those a day, so you're not going to over protein yourself on that. I would suggest.
You have 2 of those a day, do you?
I do. I'm naughty, very naughty, and I find that is a good level. It says on the box, don't exceed 1, but it doesn't tell me why not. So you know what I'm like, Stephen. No one's going to tell me what to do.
Yes. Well, I do know that, yes. Well, got me spikes out and sprinting now.
Wow.
So maybe it had an effect. I don't know. Well, anyway, look, I've got that off my chest. Have you got anything you want to discuss, or do you want to wrap up? It's up to you.
Yeah, we can move towards the wrap up. I think we've covered things off there in terms of the issue with the bloods and the A1C and the carnivore A1C drifting up, and there being no evidence whatsoever that that's problematic, and there being a good explanation for it, which you've outlined there very well with the reticulocyte thing, which is basically almost, it's not an actual slam dunk, but it's almost a slam dunk that says, yes, carnivore red blood cells are living longer. Even if that's not so, doesn't matter. That's not devastating to us, because we're not doing that with our blood sugar. So the middle is not a problem. And if ours drifts up over time, so be it. I wouldn't like to see it get much over 6.
Yeah, well, it never does.
Hey, look, there's no evidence that this slight upward drift over time in carnivores in the A1C is at all indicative of a problem at this point. Until further data comes in to prove otherwise that there's any kind of problem, we're just going to assume that there isn't a problem rather than assuming that there is a problem on the basis of a informal fallacy known as begging the question.
Taken from a real person. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So there's your spikes that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, we've got, it's much easier there on your eye.
Yeah.
No spikes, basically.
Exactly. Now, if we look at the average blood glucose level across that entire period as a straight line, would not see a big difference between the top one and the bottom one.
No.
It's the spikes, it's the range, the spikes and troughs. And it's the spikes where the damage is being done. Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. All right. And, of course, the other thing we touched on was the testimonial, really, from Stephen, his personal experience with the consumption of cereal products, followed by not consuming cereal products for a while, followed by going back on cereal products and realizing what a difference the cereal products were making. And that's a very common story, as I said. That's fantastic. And that's good. Of course, you can source your fine cereal products for yourself. And all you need to do is go to the link, which is at the bottom of the screen right now, which will direct you straight to Stephen's shop. Yeah. And you can support what Stephen's doing there. And you should. Because, well, increasing your circulating resources in terms of adult stem cells is a good idea. It really is. These things are quite miraculous.
Well, anyway, look, Bart, thank you for a good bit of time here with you. It's been quite a pleasure, actually.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you, Stephen.
Yeah.
You're one of the people on my good list, I've decided. You don't want to go on my bad side. You know what I mean? I'll be making all sorts of videos about you.
Well, I'm not going to be eating fruit and honey for any time soon. So I don't think.
Or if you do, just don't tell us. Just let us believe. Don't shatter our worldview. Don't give us the facts. Just tell us what to do. All right, my man. It's been a pleasure. And it's now it's 11:05 p.m. for me. So I better go and put my head down.
Well, Good night.
All right. See you then.